When we talk about corruption and conspiracy, that's a fact in the state of South Carolina. This document here is reported with recommendation by Judge Paige A. Gossett of the United States District Court, Columbia, South Carolina. I wanted to include it in the last video, but I wasn't able to do so, so I'm doing it at this point. This is verification of her report and recommendation. But I want you to pay attention to page 2 and the last page. I did not include all documents because it's not needed. I want you to remember this statement here because we're going to discuss it. Plaintiff indicate he bring this action pursuant to Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Title 7, 42 U.S.C. 2000 for failure to hire, retaliation, and deprivation. And that is correct. I did bring those actions against those defendants in my filing of the complaint. But yet Judge Gossett found a way to rule against her own reporting recommendation, as was shown in the last video. I'm not going to present that order in this video, but it was presented in the last video made. But as you can see, in the conclusion of her reporting recommendation, she only recommended that the complaint be dismissed against South Carolina Budget and Control Board and the Office of South Carolina Governor, but she did not dismiss the complaint against South Carolina Department of Employment Workforce. But yet, Judge Gossett found a way in order to dismiss the complaint in order to benefit the defendant. But I want you to pay attention to the footnotes down the bottom. She stated notably, plaintiff failed to make any allegation that South Carolina Budget and Control Board and the Office of the South Carolina Governor violate his constitutional rights. That's a fraudulent statement. If you remember the statement that I just told you to remember about deprivation, well, deprivation is a right of the United States Constitution. And for Judge Gossett to have noted that in her reporting recommendation, she has provided verification that I made that claim in my complaint when filing it in the United States District Court. But when you are corrupt to the core, you will do and say anything. And you expect a black man just to accept it and run with it. But the one thing about this black man, I believe in verification. If you state it, I'm going to see can I verify it. And that's what I did. And so the reason why deprivation was important to me because I was denied the basic right to work, to earn an income, to eat, to have basic human rights. And that's where deprivation comes from because many blacks during the 1960s and before, they were denied basic human rights with regard to their white counterparts. And that's why deprivation became a right of the United States Constitution. So when she made that claim about, I have not made any claims that my constitutional right had been violated, Judge Paige A. Gossett, that's a fraudulent statement. But you did it because of corrupt purpose. To further show just how corrupt Judge Paige A. Gossett is, she provided myself and the defendant a scheduling order regarding deadlines for certain action to be taken with my complaint filed in the United States District Court. But I want you to pay attention to the next page at number 7. Number 7, Judge Paige A. Gossett informed all parties. This case is subject to being called for jury selection and trial 30 days following the report and recommendation or any motion describing number 6 of this order. Signed by Paige J. Gossett, September 13, 2018. But yet Judge Paige J. Gossett found a way to rule against her own report and recommendation, as stated in the last video. Because my complaint was dismissed against all 3 defendants, I filed an informal brief in the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Richmond, Virginia, and here's verification of such. But I also want you to pay attention to these issues going forward. The first issue I wanted the court to address was bias and prejudice of the court. The second issue I wanted the court to address was failure of due process, the United States Constitution 14th Amendment. The third issue I wanted the court to address, Magistrate Judge Paige J. Gossett is unfit for office. The fourth issue that I wanted Judge Gossett to address, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal to address was that Judge Paige J. Gossett and defendant engaged in ex parte communication. There was additional documents that was filed with this informal brief, but I'm not going to discuss them. This page right here is just a verification page of me certifying my informal brief. And here's a one of those attachments that was submitted with my informal brief. This is also part of another attachment that was submitted with the informal brief. There also was additional documents that are not presented here that also was submitted with my informal brief. Because my informal brief was received and accepted by the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Richmond, Virginia, the defendant had to provide a response, and this is just a cover page as verification of them submitting that response to the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Richmond, Virginia. But I want to bring your attention to page 5 of this order of their response to the court. And I want you to pay your attention to the second paragraph. Petitioner filed a notice of appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals challenging the dismissal of his claims on January 24, 2019. Petitioner informal brief cited allegation of judicial misconduct, lack of due process. However, and I'm going to stop there. So in my informal brief, I first show you the issue that was raised to the court. Now I'm showing you a document that was filed by the defendant verifying that I addressed the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal with regard to judicial misconduct. But you're going to see just how corrupt even the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals with regards to a black man seeking justice. This document here is an order from the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals affirming the decision by the United States District Court. And the judges on that case was Nehemiah, Keenan, and Senior Circuit Judge Traxler, as shown here. Here is the opinion of the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. And it stated, Clarence B. Jenkins Jr. appeals the magistrate judge order dismissing his amended complaint alleging violation of the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000E to 2000E-17 2018, USC 6036 2018. We have found no evidence supporting Jenkins' assertion that the magistrate judge and defendants engaged in misconduct during the proceeding, and because Jenkins' opening informal brief does not challenge the grounds for the magistrate judge's disposition, he has forfeited appellate review of those rulings. It goes on to say the informal brief is an important document under the Fourth Circuit rules. Our review is limited to issues preserved in that brief. It goes a little bit further and says, we will not consider issue raised for the first time in a reply brief. This is a fraudulent statement by the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Richmond, Virginia, that's supposed to have oversight over the United States District Court, Columbia, South Carolina. But when all are corrupt, there's no justice in America for a black man. Because I showed you my informal opening brief, and I raised the issue of judicial misconduct. So when the Fourth Circuit cited that I did not raise any of these issues on my informal brief, that's a fraudulent statement. And when they also say that I raised the issue for the first time in a reply brief, that's also the fraudulent statement, because I showed you copies of my informal initial brief filed with the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and therefore, by the court denying me a review, an appellate review, they denied me justice, due process, and this was obstruction of justice. And I also provide verification from the defendant acknowledging in their response to the court that my informal brief stated judicial misconduct regarding the United States District Court of Columbia, South Carolina. So therefore, how could the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, Richmond, Virginia, come up with an opinion such as this? But when you think a black man is not worthy of justice, and when you think a black man is only worthy the hands of justice when he has committed a crime, whether he's guilty or innocent, that is the only time that you apply the hands of justice toward a black man. But when a black man has been wronged, you see it as unworthy of due process. And therefore, what you have done, the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, you have participated in judicial misconduct by this opinion, just like the United States District Court, Columbia, South Carolina, by United States Magistrate Judge Paige J. Gossett and Chief Justice Terry L. Wooten. And therefore, I'm asking the United States Department of Justice for an investigation for obstruction of justice, intentional obstruction of justice by the United States District Court, Columbia, South Carolina, and the United States Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, denying a black man due process and presenting fraudulent statements and documents as a record when there are documents to verify their claims of intentional act to harm. And therefore, as a black man, In America, justice is still required.